y'all. I am Crafty Hope, and I am coming in here to show you a look at how I created cards 22, 23, and 24 for the Daisy Yellow ICAD 2019. Now, this challenge runs through June and July. It'll possibly be over by the time you get to see this, but I still want to share my process for making these cards. I've got all the information about the challenge below in the description box, and hopefully you can take this and do what with it what you will. But I'd like to show you my process each day. Tammy from Daisy Yellow gives us a prompt to work from, and this card, which is 22, the prompt was bicycle, and I had a little piece of paper, you'll get to see in a minute, that has a cute little guy on a bicycle. But for now, I took some underpaper, which is the paper that I put underneath the surface where I'm working that gets all painty and stampy and colorful, and glued that straight onto my card. And this is a 4x6 index card, and I am accenting that with some Marabou art crayons. Now, these are water soluble, and I don't know, I love water soluble things. And I'm using a stencil to just go around. This is just some fun circles, kind of bubbly thing, and I'm going around the outside of those circles with those Marabou art crayons and creating just some fun colors, something bright and awesome. And then to kind of color in those bubbles, I'm just taking a wet paintbrush and going inside, and spreading that color from, like I said, they're water soluble, so they kind of act like a watercolor. And so that's how I'm filling in all of these bubbles, and I kind of love the effect. Now, that under paper I'm using is it's from like a paper sack that I had from something that I had been using just as, a surface to protect my surface, and it's a great way to gather up extra color that comes off of stuff you're working on. So once I get all those bubbles colored, I'm gonna dry it real quick to because I know the next step I want it kind of dry. And here what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a gold gel pen. Now, this gold gel pen doesn't work real great, and it snags on some of the wax from the Marabou art crayons, but it gives such a neat sketchy effect around each of these bubbles, and gives it a little sparkle and lets those bubbles stand out from the underpaper, the painting underpaper. So it works really, really well. It's something I may try to do again because I kind of dig how this worked. I don't know if you can see it here, but you'll definitely see it, the pictures at the end of this video. So here's my little jaunty guy on a bicycle. It was the only bicycle image I could find in my stash, but I kind of love him, so it doesn't really matter if he's the only one or not. He is from a Susan Lennart Casimir set of papers that I had gotten at Tuesday morning, so he worked perfectly. I'm using a little more of that craft paper. That's kind of like that paper sack I used to, I don't know, to frame him a little bit and let him stand out. And I inked that up around the outside of it with just some black ink pad. And you can see I'm looking for some kind of words or something to go with him. And I thought I was going to use maybe that piece of tissue paper there. But I think I decided that just it didn't really do what I wanted to do. So I grabbed these chipboard quotes from Tim Holtz, and as soon as I opened that little box, "Adventure awaits" just, I don't know, stood out for me, and I was like, yes, that guy is definitely going off on an adventure. He looks like he's about to ride down a hill and having a lot of fun doing it. So I glued that down with a little bit of gel medium, and I'm using my Oohoo glue stick just to glue down the paper pieces, the guy on his little paper sack and all of that. Now you see here the light's going to change here in a second because I realized that I didn't like exactly how some of it stood up, so I go around the Adventure Awaits with my Stabilo All pencil and a water brush to let that pop, and then I ink up the outside edges of the card just to frame it, and then this card is done. So I'm going to let you take a look at it, and then we'll get to the next card. 23 has the prompt of poem, and really the only way I brought poem, the only real way I brought poem into this was I have this book with like, I think it's German in it. I'm not real sure. And it looks like, if you can see that paper there, it's a poem of some kind. I have no idea what it says, what it means, nothing like that, but it has the layout of a poem. So that is what I used for my background, is this German poem. So once I get that on there, I decide to use these tulip sprays. Now these are really like clothing sprays, but they work great on paper. They give an opaque spray to it that a lot of the other ink sprays don't. A lot of the ink sprays are more transparent, but these really stand out. And that's what I kind of love about them, even if they are intended for clothing. So I dried those up real good before I got just a little bit of gray paint on a palette knife, and I'm just using this to scrape across my card to push back some of those really bright colors, because the sprays are neon, and I wanted, I didn't want that to be a focal. I'm just trying to build up a background. And I've got these like background stamps that have different things. These have letters on them, and I use that Distress Oxide black soot on there, and I love it. The way that Distress Oxide comes through, it makes it look almost like it was sprayed through a stencil, and it wasn't, but I don't know, I love that distressiness to it. So the stuff that I'm putting down here is, I think it's called no, I'm sorry, drywall tape. That's what it's called. And it's basically like this long roll of stickers that have just like these dots. And it's got a backer, and you just peel the backer off, and it's paper. And I just kind of did that randomly on the page to add some texture, some actual, like, you can feel it texture. And then I added a little more of that bright like cherry red on there with a distress crayon, and colored in a couple of the dots inside that drywall tape, just to give some mark making interest. The sticker that I'm sticking down here is from the Dollar Tree. It is just like a little 3D sticker that is kind of fun. So I threw that down there, and I'm going around the outside of the card with, I think that's walnut stain Distress Oxide, and that'll come back into play here in a minute. Now these are the Tim Holtz Snarky, what are they? I can't remember what they're called. They're the snarky stickers from Tim Holtz. And this is another way I almost kind of bring poem in. I cut this phrase down, which says, "I have absolutely no desire to fit in," and I layer it so that it looks like it's in lines like a poem. So, but really, it's not a poem at all. And I used that walnut stain. I put a little bit on my craft mat, and I'm wetting a paintbrush to add some shadow around both that phrase and then around the flower that's sitting there. So, like I said, the rest of this really doesn't have anything to do with poem, other than there's some kind of German poem in the background. But I really like it. I got to play with some things, and it came together beautifully. Take a look. My final card in this series is card number 24, and its theme was music box. And I had a general idea of what I want to do. It's a little quirky and literal, but I thought it was going to be fun. So I'm just sticking down a piece of dictionary paper that has a bunch of paint on it it's where I brayer off and clean off my stencils when I'm using my jelly plate. So I try to keep those because it gives, I don't know, it's a fun little scatterbrained texture back there, and it tends to have a lot of color. So that's what I stuck down there. And then you see, I've drawn that where you make the two squares and you connect the lines and it becomes a box. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do on a piece of music paper. So it's basically a box made up of music, and it's a music box. And I'm taking a plain old Sharpie here. Oh, excuse the dog, y'all. I think my husband's out in the yard and the dog's freaking out about it. Um, anyway, I'm taking a plain old Sharpie. Actually, this is like one of the chisel tip Sharpies, but it's just a Sharpie that I'm going in there and made my box, and I'm looking at it, and it's just not, I don't know. I think I wanted more where you kind of knew it was a box. So I take a ruler and actually do a little more precise. I measure it out. I make it a bit prettier. So because that first one was wonky as all get out, wonky. So this one I measure, I think it's like 2 inches, and then just connect the two squares to one another, and that's my box right there. So I'm going to use a little bit of gesso here and paint in the basically the outsides where you can see, so that it looks a bit more like frosted glass, so that you can see the music through it, but not like completely. And so that was my general idea. Once I put the gesso down, I cut it out, and then I realized that the lines got a little distorted with both the cutting and the gesso. So I'm going to go back with my ruler and my Sharpie and kind of let those stand out again a little bit more. Now this card came together so quickly because I did have this, like I said, kind of goofy literal idea of how I wanted to do it. And I mean, it works, but it really kind of sped by for this process. So I've got that, and I'm going to glue it down. Now, it takes me a little bit of time to glue it down. I think that's because that gesso was still kind of tacky and making the paper kind of floppy, so it wasn't really sticking. And I'm just sticking that down on one side of my card, just like that. And then I'm going to take, what am I getting? I think I'm just getting my Tim Holtz Small Talk stickers here. And I almost immediately find this phrase. It says, be open to whatever comes next. And which I think is hilarious because that box is open. So, you know, kind of telling you to be open just like this box here. I know, I'm a goofball. I did want to add a little bit more, I don't know, color and texture to that background since I didn't do a whole lot with it. So I've got this little squeeze bottle of paint. I think it's a Claudine Helmuth that I've had for ages and ages that I'm trying to use up. And I just added some dots to the background. Some of them get a little smushed while I'm working with it, but that's okay. You know, it's just the background. The music box wasn't as reflective. I kind of wanted it to have the appearance of glass. So I grabbed this thing of, it's mica powder and glitter mixed together that I never use it. And I have it like close at hand. It's like within reach all the time, and I never use it. So, dagnabbit, I was going to use it. So I am just putting some gel medium down and sprinkling that mica powder on. I closed it all up because I was afraid I was going to spill it, but here you see me trying to get some of the stuff that had spilled off of it back on there to cover it a bit more. And with that, I think I just go around the outside of my phrase one more time with the Sharpie, and I may ink up the edges here because, you know, that's my jam. And with that, this card is done. Like I said, I sped through this one. Now, if you like these videos, make sure that you subscribe so you can see the rest of my ICADs, and give me a thumbs up if this in particular, you know, piques your fancy. All right, guys, I appreciate so much that you came by and took the time to watch this. Thank you so much. Bye.